So there was one day that I started thinking that 1 plus 1 equals 2. It's a property that is true for everything in the universe. And how did I get there? Well, we know that 1 plus 1 equals 2, and nobody would question that. And that is true whether or not there is anybody there to question that. But the bottom line is that something plus something equals something. Okay? And how could that be true for everything in the universe? Well, if you think about it, let's say a human being, right? Well, let me go back a little bit. Something plus something equals something leads to the fact that a process plus materials is going to equal something, right? You have, I don't know, you have a human being, okay? What is the process? Well, whether you believe in evolution or creation, the fact of the matter is that there was a process, right? Whether it was the process of evolution or the process of creation, there still was a process. And what's the materials? Well, the materials are the chemical components that make our body. Hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, carbon, all that good stuff. So you got the process plus the materials equals human being. Well, that's obviously true for every single piece of biological system that there is here on this planet or anywhere else. There is a process, there's a materials, and out comes, giraffe or dinosaur, whatever the case might be. Process plus materials equals something. Well, that happens to be true also even for our thoughts, right? If I think of the word, well, the process for me to think of the word, it's very similar, or actually, it is the process that made me, because what is the word in my mind made up of? What it led to? What was the process? It's the same process as before, right? Whether it was evolution or creation, and the same materials. But then, there's some electrons flowing from one side of the head to the other side, and I think of the word, and whether or not there is some other process that caused for me to think of the word, there's still some process and some materials. Say, for example, let's say that human beings were encoded in the DNA with the word, right? That is not something that I learned as a result of my upbringing, but it was something that was already in there. For argument's sake, okay? So still, there is a process, there's materials, and then voila, there's the word. Or let's say that my mind could be influenced by some outside entity, okay, outside of my body. Well, there's still process, because now there's a combination of two processes, right? The process that allow me to, become a human being. Then there's the process of that entity that is affecting my thought process to cause me to think of the word. And then there's the materials. The materials are still the same, right? Electrons, protons, neutrons, phosphorus, carbon, hydrogen, etc. So can you see then that everything in the universe, absolutely everything in the universe, would have a process and materials, and then that would equal something, right? A nebula happens what happens, and then things spin off and planets are formed and all that stuff. There's a process, there's materials, and the outcome, the equal to, is planetary system. It doesn't matter what you think of. There will still be something plus something equals something. In absolutely everything in the universe. Now, why should that be important to anyone? Well, because that something plus something equals something is true at any given point in our existence, whether it was a point in the past, a point in the present, or a point in the future. Let's say, I have a pen, right? What led to this pen? There was a process, there's some materials, and voila, you got the pen. Well, the process and the materials that are needed to create this pen are true, just like 1 plus 1 equals 2, whether this pen was invented, I don't know, the pen was originally invented, let's say 1900, or 2,000 years before Christ. If I go back in time, 2,000 years before Christ, with my nifty travel machine, right? Time travel machine, and I take my my computer and all the schematics of how to create a pen. Voila! 2,000 years before Christ, I still would be able to make a pen. If I go into the future, well, we already got all this same thing, right? So I could create a pen today, just like we can. I could create a pen in the future. I could create a pen in the past. The only difference between now and the past is that we were not actively thinking about all the processes that are needed to create the pen. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't possible 2,000 years ago or 2,000 years before Christ. Okay? So what makes the difference? Well, among other things, is collaboration, right? I am able to have this pen in my hand because there's a lot of people that are collaborating to cause for me to have this pen in my hand. Well, since everything is equal to something, process plus materials is equal to something, any discoveries that we make in the future are possible today, just like this pen was possible 2,000 years before Christ. Anything that anyone could build new in the future could be built today because everything is equal to something. So, and remember, that includes the word. Well, that also includes the cure for cancer, the cure for diabetes, the cure for every single piece of ailment that could hurt our body. Whatever discovery we could discover in the future, we could discover today. Because the answer equals something plus something equals something of that something that is in the future is true today. So, as you can see, the full cycle of knowledge, right? Whatever that is, it's possible today. Whatever that is possible today. And the difference that is going to make that is collaboration. Now, not just collaboration amongst ourselves, but collaboration with other nations and people just collaborating in every single possible aspect out there. When you take away greed out of the equation, that is exponentially going to have an impact on how fast we could solve problems. Okay? I'm not saying ambition is bad. You know, all those things that have led to what we are today, for example, they're not necessarily bad. It's just, you know, when it gets to be something obsessive, when it becomes something that is hurtful to ourselves or humanity, then it keeps us from achieving those things that we could achieve, you know, 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 10,000 years from now. We could achieve them today. And the only way to do that is to remove greed from that equation. When you are selfless, when you think about not only your neighbor, right? Won't you be my neighbor? Like Mr. Rogers used to say. Not only when you think about your neighbor, when you think about your community, when you think about the world, when you think about humanity, when your essence of being is about bringing about the best thing for everyone, and if everybody thinks that way, then things that we could achieve 10,000 years from now could be achieved today, because you remove greed from the equation. Selfless, to be selfless, right? To be able to collaborate. A more fancy word for that is to have love. To have love for your neighbor, your human beings, the world, humanity. You know, this crazy idea that, you know, one race is better than the other. No, whether it was evolution or creation. Evolution or creation led to people of different races, different colors of skin, and, you know, and there must be something that process plus materials equals different races that is important for us to be different races. So it sounds fancy, but love is the answer. Love for everything.